Thank you, everybody, for being here. And we were mentioned before, Diane Frank is here. And she's my editor from Blue Light Press, and the book would not exist without her, for sure. Her encouraging me to keep going and to put it together and week after week. So, and actually in Blue Light Press, this is the fourth book of mine that Blue Light Press has published. So I'm very grateful. And I want to call out to Jean Colonomos because she did a blurb for the back and she's here. And also, and then Charlie, Charlie Karp, who we were talking about too before, the wonderful painter who did the cover. And all the people from, well, there are people aside from Cambodia, which is incredible, and then there's people, and then there's Diane's in San Francisco, and my friend Betsy is here from San Diego. So, and there's people all the way down the coast. So that's it's really nice to see you. And yeah, it's true. The advantage of Zoom is that these people come to readings who might not be able to come, So, so I'm going to read, and I do have information in the chat about my book and how to get it. And I'm just going to read a few poems from it. And I must say that one of the main themes of the book, it's kind of what got it started, is this idea of what I call the divine feminine, or her, kind of a theme of finding her women across time, across centuries. And so the first poem in the book is on that theme, and it's called Illuminator Dreams. And it's about, I heard on public radio about the discovery of a body of a 11th century nun in northern Germany a couple of years ago, and it was very well preserved. And it was found, when they found her, she had blue in her teeth, and they knew that, and that was lapis, and that she was a scribe or a illuminator. And up until that time, they had never had any proof that women were illuminators. It was always the monks, in doing it in their towers. So I was so excited to hear that, because I kind of knew that there had to be women who were doing these illuminations, which I have always loved. So, Illuminator Dreams. An 11th century nun in northern Germany, scribe and painter. She copies the gospel in a tower among oak branches. She dreams of light falling across the page, shining through the leaves, drawing her in, and she writes a story beneath the story. Painting her dream light, she learns underneath is more, too much light to see in the margins of the world. With a hard tip brush, she dips into ultramarine, made from crushed lapis lazuli, paints on calfskin, rests with a tiny brush in her mouth, wets it, readying herself to paint Mary's blue gown. Her painting, like the scribble of rain on the lake's wide page, breaking off light, breaking off when the light moves on. She follows deeper, weary, inside the womb of rock, of rain. She dreams of lapis stones carried from Afghanistan by merchants along that great Silk Road, stones worth more than gold. Once she sat in sunlight near a waterfall, and once she sang near the southern sea. This is her story now, and the light is hers forever. In 1,000 years, another woman will find flecks of lapis in the nun's stone teeth, nested like tiny blue robin eggs. And it was the archaeologist that found this body was a woman archaeologist, and I just thought that was so cool. So it was one of those times when it's a poem, you just say, oh, there's a poem. And the next poem is on the same theme of finding her. It's called Finding Her, Mother Goddess on Her Throne, 5750 BC. And it's a statue, I'll show it to you, that I found in the Museum of Anatolian Civilizations in Ankara, Turkey. And I was so excited when I found this. It's just a cheap copy of it, but I saw the real thing from that time, 5750 BC. And I just love this. And she's just, there's a child coming out from between her legs. And I just love her big butt, you know, and it's like, yeah, I saw it. So that's this poem, Finding Her, Mother Goddess on Her Throne. No more than terracotta, warmed earth smell, her thick body on a little clay throne, breasts like large loaves, buttocks like melons. She's flanked on each side by sacred lion animals, her hands their heads, a melding of woman and beast. Her belly protrudes and softens. A child's head emerges from between her thighs. Paleolithic mother goddess, thunder heart of the land of us all. Before Aphrodite, older than Artemis, her face lifts as she listens to her own music. Hair piled on her head, small nose, enduring mouth, shored up against ruin, against history. She is for walking toward, through sage, heat, locusts, war. Her gravity reminds me of my great-grandmother Josephine in an old portrait, black Irish hair coiled, wine dark sea eyes, body conformed to a hive. Found whole, surrounded by ancient fragments of a puzzle, humming an ancient note. Listen, they say, do you want to hear all the women resting inside us? In dirt, rock, chant, dark. I have traveled so far to find her memory. And one other woman poem, this one is for modern day. It's set in Lisbon, in the Alfama, where there are a lot of restaurants in the medieval section, the Alfama, and women, this particular woman goes from restaurant to restaurant and sings fados. And people just, you know, people just love it. They're just wonderful. So this is called Music for a Sleepless Night, Lisbon in the Alfama. Before she ever moans from that world-edge throat, rough velvet cigarette smoke and wine, the diners begin to clap. Her bare feet gripping flagstone, a big woman, neither young nor old, that voice tangled in long hair, baptized in dark water. Dark sounds curl up from her feet, from below ancient roots. Something about her childhood, a broken heart, Portuguese so close to Spanish, a word now and then floats clear, her fados always sung along this river, erupting from the silence of fish. Her voice born where river meets sea, she enters you at night with her liquid soul, possesses you. And this, this poem, as I got the book, after I got it and started reading it, I realized that almost all the poems in the book had a start in sound of some kind, music or bird song or some kind of, there's a sound base to it. And I didn't even realize that. I should have. I mean, that's why it's called Nocturne. But even when I thought of the title, I didn't make the connection, between all these poems that started in sound. So the next one is also one of those. It's called Nocturne in Blue. And of course, it's in the title. And I heard Joshua Bell play he wrote a transcription of Chopin's Nocturne No. 2. And it was so beautiful. And I loved the way, from piano to violin to me, to the way things go from one kind of art to another, you know. So that's poem is about that. Nocturne in Blue. His violin carries me to Paris, where I walk alone in twilight shimmer as street lamps, bridges shine with rain, fog rising from the Seine. The past is a stone in my hand. I finger it as evening deepens, plant myself on Pont de la Tournelle, watch the back of Notre Dame as the sky shifts through layers of blue. Darkness shrouds the cathedral. Even after the great fire, the flat, dark skeletons of its buttresses fly, softened by leafing plane trees. I'm not alone here. On the bank of the bridge, Saint Geneviève lays her hands on the shoulders of a child, a young Paris, city she once protected from the Huns. We're not strangers. At 18, I was given her name, aching to become a holy Sister Genevieve. I, who never left St. Paul, prayed to the protector of Paris, begging her to guide me on sleepless convent nights. She looks through 16 centuries down on me again, no longer laboring to be holy. Joshua Bell's violin distills blue from Chopin's Notes for Piano. The musk of centuries, gathering dusk, a surge of strings against the night. Past, present, future, one smooth stone. I like it when people do that after the poems. You know, it gives a connection. I like that you're doing that. I was at a reading, you know, when people weren't doing that, and I thought, oh, you know, it's not as good as when you see some response through the screen. So thank you. Okay, the next poem also started with a sound. It's a bell, the sound of a bell that caught memory, and it took me back to childhood, to my elementary school. So this poem was in Spillway, not this year, last year, and it's called, here, I'll just read it. There is a bell inside this memory, and a hand that rings it. There's a playground of children, squeezed between red brick school and sandstone church, lining up by our sizes. And I am always in the front as we tumble and march through the doors of classrooms opening into wainscoted halls. It's a kind of relief to come in, jumpers, twirlers, shouters. For those who played and those like me who played at playing, for those who watched walking laps at the edge of the schoolyard. We all seem to float away like leaves turning in the wind. It's good we are warming our desks again, such cold little desks, screwed down to the floor. How good and sleepy we feel to know what we know. The young nun will push her veil from her face. The small hands on the clock will slowly circle, and the thick brown shoes we've kept tied all day will take us home, through streets freshly tarred, through scraggly empty lots, lilac bushes, bridal wreath, and yards where grass will not grow, to our small crowded houses fastened firmly to earth. I remember my great-grandfather in his corner, lost in the smell of drifting pipe tobacco. And later the moon hiding from me behind trees, the pattern of leaves on its face. I come from the sound of the bell and lace of broken moonlight. Where else would I belong? So that Phil always says that's a good nun poem. I have some bad nun poems too, but that's a good nun poem. So, and here's another poem based again on sound, on songs. This poem is it's for John Berryman. John Berryman, who was the great American poet, who was teaching at the University of Minnesota when I first started there in graduate school, and who he committed suicide in 1972. And so the poem brings up a lot of things that remind me of now, like a terrible time that we lived through, and we did survive it. So it's called The Songs for John Berryman. We passed one day on the steps of Lind Hall, you late for class, wild hair, glasses askew. I was just out of the convent, new in graduate school, books bouncing on my back as I ran down Church Street to join the marchers. 5,000 strong on Washington Avenue, they sang, "We shall overcome." And then began the chant that frightened me. Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh is gonna win. I couldn't sing that because those jungles hid my youngest brother. At home, I opened your dream songs, blown away by your impertinent piety. Iambic, the only verse I knew until you brought me ear to ear with a new scripture. And these next 4 lines are from one of his dream songs. A Buddhist doused in the street serenely burned, the Secretary of State for War, winking it over, screwed a wet-head whore. Monsignor Capovilla mourned, what a week. You needled me, wheedled me, not with beauty, but scarifying singe, created in all-night drunks, bruised, raging blues, your book of revelations. I wanted some of that wildness in me. As your songs freed my lines, my fears, your music moved in me. How could I resist? I was learning poetry and sex. 3 years later, your body hit the rocks below the river bridge I walked across. My brother in the hospital. My country was still bombing, Vietnam to kingdom come. So, okay, I'm going to read 2 more poems. This one it's called Our Story, and it just it's a narrative poem, tells my story and my husband's story. I wrote it for our anniversary. Our Story. I was from down the hill, West 7th's huddled houses, under Highland Park's frowning doors and windows. You were up the hill, that neighborhood of churches like forts, tree-lined playgrounds. Around Highland Pool, you charged, pushing us girls screaming into the deep end. Your blonde hair bleached by sun, my pale skin reddening like my Irish grandma's, black hair dripping. Somehow I knew even then, so our story goes, that fate would circle us round when we were grown. Later, newly sprung from the convent, I had just stumbled out of that bleak house in Northeast, free in butterfly yellow, no more under the unblinking stare of my superior. One night in Dinkytown, I asked a friend if he knew a man with a beautiful soul, and he called you, fresh out of the Christian Brothers. Remember how we drove together to the Brothers' house on Summit to pick up the papers releasing you from vows? Your superior predicted you'd end up washing dishes somewhere. We were a run-on sentence escaping religion, a winter that would not end, a road with a single direction. With a comma moon above us, we merged like 2 worlds, 2 words. 50 years later, it's just you and me through lawn-baked summers, sun-baked summers, in the years washing dishes together, slowing the night's long phrases with our full stop bodies. And my last poem is also dedicated to my husband. At the beginning of the pandemic, there was this video that I watched like 10 times at least on TV. It was Andrea Bocelli singing Amazing Grace, both inside and on the steps of Milan Cathedral. And as he was singing, they showed all the great cities all empty. And it just was like this heartbreaking video. I mean, I just would watch it and just bawl, over and over and over again. So it's called In a Time of Distancing for Tim. Sometimes I just want to touch you when I'm caught in the honeyed notes of the cello, or hearing the chorus of gulls quarrel at low tide feast, the drumming of surf in their throats. I live in the silence between notes, between whistle cries of the finches and the seshra of being present. The world wants to be loved. Andrea Bocelli sings for us in hollow glitter of Milan Cathedral. On the steps in front of soaring doors and statues of the saved, he sings, I was blind, but now I see. While videos of cities without people flash on screen, the Seine with no bookstalls, Trafalgar with no traffic, Times Square, a crazy tunnel echoing the in-your-face circus that was. The space between Tibetan Bowl Moon and Lavender Sea buzzes with ions. In the opera of what we're living through, you help me stay grounded when stars call. I touch you in the spaces of my longing. That's it.